mengapa tidak ada nubuat Nabi Muhammad di dalam kitab ini? Mengapa? Rasanya tidak masuk akal kalau Nabi Muhammad Shallallahu Alaihi Wasallam tidak ada di dalam kitab ini. Ya,
Apa kabar para sahabat? Jumpa lagi di channel kita ini. Semoga video ini memberkati.
Video bahasan kita kali ini, tidak ada nubuat Muhammad di dalam Alkitab.
jumpa lagi bersama saya Laude dalam acara nubuat Nabi Muhammad Shallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Ya, pada kesempatan malam hari ini tentu saja kita akan melihat referensi yang disampaikan oleh Al-Quran. Ya, ketika Al-Quran mengatakan seperti yang sudah saya bacakan ayat tadi, ya, dalam surat surat ke-61 ayat ke-6. Ketika Yesus berkata kepada Bani Israel, "Hai Bani Israel, sesungguhnya aku ini adalah Rasul, utusan Allah kepadamu, yang membenarkan Taurat yang datang sebelumku, ya, dan memberikan kepada kalian kabar gembira akan Rasul yang datang sesudahku, yang namanya Ahmad." Tatkala Rasul itu datang, mereka berkata, "Ini adalah sihir yang nyata."
Sebelum video dilanjut, yang belum subscribe silahkan subscribe. Share sebanyak-banyaknya. Jangan lupa diklik tombol loncengnya, agar setiap ada video baru, Anda dapat notifikasinya. Like, share, dan komen.
Nah, sehubungan dengan nubuat Nabi Muhammad Shallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, ya, kita bisa lihat di dalam Alkitab. Ya, dalam hal ini, ya, referensi yang akan kita sampaikan tentu saja berhubungan dengan Alkitab yang tentu saja diamini oleh saudara-saudara kita umat Yahudi dan Kristen. Ya, nah, ketika kita mengklaim, ya, bahwa Nabi Muhammad Shallallahu Alaihi Wasallam dinubuatkan di dalam Taurat dan Injil, ya, ketika Allah mengatakan Nabi Muhammad itu dinubuatkan di dalam kitab-kitab yang diturunkan kepada Musa dan juga Yesus, ya, yaitu Taurat dan Injil, maka ketika kita bertanya bahwa referensi yang seharusnya menjadi rujukan ketika Al-Quran mengklaim bahwa Nabi Muhammad sudah dinubuatkan di dalam kitab yang diturunkan oleh Allah kepada nabi-nabi sebelumnya, maka kita bisa melihat di dalam Alkitab yang diimani oleh saudara kita umat Kristen, yaitu di dalam kitab Perjanjian Lama dan di dalam kitab Perjanjian Baru ini. Nah, ketika kita bertanya kepada umat Kristen, "Wahai saudaraku umat Kristen, apakah benar Nabi Muhammad Shallallahu Alaihi Wasallam dinubuatkan di dalam kitab ini?" Ya, maka tentu saja umat Kristen itu di mana saja mereka berada, ya, baik di ujung timur ataupun di ujung barat, di timur ataupun di selatan, semua mereka mengatakan bahwa tidak ada, ya, tidak ada nubuat Nabi Muhammad Shallallahu Alaihi Wasallam di dalam kitab ini. Tetapi anehnya, ya, ini yang menjadi suatu keanehan bagi kita sebagai seorang Muslim, ya, ketika kita menanyakan kepada mereka apa yang sebenarnya dinubuatkan di dalam kitab ini, ya, maka mereka pasti akan menjawab tentang banyak hal, ya, terutama tentang nubuat akhir zaman. Ya, nubuat akhir zaman tentu saja mereka akan bersemangat menceritakan dari A sampai Z bahwa nubuat akhir zaman itu, ya, ada di dalam kitab ini. Tentu juga tentang sejarah, ya, bagaimana proses terciptanya langit, ya, bagaimana manusia yang pertama itu ada di dalam Taman Eden juga ada disebutkan di sini. dan juga bagaimana sejarah Bani Israel dan pasca terpecahnya Bani Israel itu menjadi dua ya setelah kita ketahui bahwa pasca runtuhnya kerajaan Salomo itu ya kerajaannya pecah menjadi dua, yaitu kerajaan di sebelah utara dan di sebelah selatan. Dan juga banyak nubuat-nubuat lain yang ada di dalam Alkitab ini, apalagi nubuat tentang kerajaan Asyur ya, kemudian bangsa Babilonia, kemudian bangsa Persia ya, dan juga bangsa Romawi tentunya. Ya, mereka akan bercerita, semuanya ada di sini. Ya, yang menjadi pertanyaan pada kita itu ya, mengapa tidak ada nubuat Nabi Muhammad di dalam kitab ini? Mengapa? Rasanya tidak masuk akal kalau Nabi Muhammad SAW tidak ada di dalam kitab ini. Ya, karena Nabi Muhammad adalah satu-satunya manusia di dunia ini ya yang membawa pengikutnya itu untuk percaya pada Yesus, bahwa Yesus adalah Mesias, ya, kelahirannya yang ajaib, ya, kemudian dengan mukjizat-mukjizat yang dimiliki oleh Yesus tentu izin Allah. Jadi mustahil jika Nabi Muhammad itu tidak dinubuatkan di dalam kitab ini. Mustahil sekali.
Saya potong videonya di sini, karena yang berikutnya adalah klaim-klaim Islam yang sudah baku mengenai nubuat Muhammad. Kembali ke komplain Laode, kenapa tidak ada nubuat Muhammad di dalam Alkitab? Jawabannya, Alkitab adalah kebenaran, jadi tidak akan memuat suatu entitas yang tidak nyata. Muhammad, nyata ataukah fiksi, berdasarkan bukti-bukti sejarah.
The first Arab inscription referencing Muhammad is not till 691. Muhammad died in 632. Isn't that interesting?
Tidak ada referensi Arab untuk Muhammad sebelum tahun 691. Pada 60 tahun setelah kematiannya.
There's no Arab reference to Muhammad earlier than 691. That's 60 years after he died. The first reference to Muslim, the word Muslim, is not till the 690s.
Perhatikan, referensi pertama untuk kata Muslim tidak ada sebelum tahun 690.
So what did these people who were destroying and taking over Basra, Baghdad, Damascus, Jerusalem, and Cairo, what did they call themselves? Well, they called themselves Saracen, which is the Arab name for these people. They call themselves Hagarim because they are in the line of Hagar. They call themselves Ishmaelite because they were aligned through Hagar down to Ishmael, so therefore they would be in that line. They call themselves Maghreb because they come from the Maghreb, and they call themselves Mahajurun. These are the names they call themselves, those 5 names. The Mahajurun means people of the Hijr, people of the Exodus, people who are nomadic. The first reference to the word Islam is not till 691 on the Dome of the Rock, there in Jerusalem.
Referensi pertama untuk kata Islam tidak ada hingga tahun 691 pada kubah batu di Yerusalem.
And the first reference to the city of Mecca is not till 741. Muhammad died in 632.
Dan referensi pertama untuk kota Mekah tidak ada hingga tahun 741, padahal Muhammad meninggal tahun 632.
As you know, as I already said, the first biography of Muhammad is not till 833. Now let's unpack this and let's see what we're talking about.
Sekarang kita perhatikan bahasan J. Smith yang mengacu pada hasil penelitian Dan Gibson. Perlu diketahui, Dan Gibson adalah scholar yang telah 30 tahun meneliti Islam dan Muhammad.
Let's start with Dan Gibson's material. Now, Dan Gibson, when he was looking at the Quran, and you can do the same thing, he wanted to find out where the geographical locations were in the Quran, and he noticed there were 65 geographical locations. 9 places are named over and over again, and the names that come up over and over again are these people from Ad. 23 times it talks about this prophet who has contact and has relationship with these people from Ad. It doesn't mention who this prophet is. It just says the prophet, the messenger. The prophet, from the place of the prophet, from the place of the messenger. It doesn't refer to where he lives. Isn't that curious? In fact, you're not going to find reference to Muhammad. You will. There, in all the many references to Muhammad, take a look, you'll see they are all in parentheses, which means they've had to been put in at a later date. Muhammad's name is in Arabic is only found 4 times. 3 times in one surah alone. 4 times. How many times is Jesus found in the Quran? Try 93. So this messenger has contact with these people from Ad 23 times. 24 times he has contact with these people from Thamud. And 7 times for these people from Midian. Ad, Thamud, Midian, where are they? Well, they're not around Mecca. They're way up here. 600 miles further north. But here's Mecca way down here. If he's living in Mecca, how come he's having these contacts, daily contacts with people that are 600 miles away? Put that under your hat and hold it a minute. Let's talk about Mecca. See, what we now know about Mecca, it's only referenced once in the entire Quran, and it talks about the valley of Mecca in Surah 48, Ayah 24. That's it. No other time does it talk about this place. Well, what do we know about Mecca? Well, we know that there's also reference to Bakka. We don't know if that is Mecca. We know that if you look at the traditions and you add them with the Quranic material, we do know right there that it's in a valley. We know that there's a parallel valley where the Mecca is. We know that it has a stream going through it, that it has a pillar of salt outside of it, because when this prophet goes past in the morning, he passes the pillar of salt. That's the wife of Lot. And when he comes in the evening, he passes that same pillar of salt. More than that, we know that there are fields, clay, grass, trees, loam, and olive trees. That's curious. And that there are mountains overlooking the Kaaba. Now take a look at every one of these references. None of these fit Mecca. Mecca is not in a valley. There is no parallel valley. There is no stream going through it. It only has one well, the Zamzam well. It could not have accommodated any caravans. It does not have tree, fields, clay, glass, or any suggestion of any olive trees, because olive trees only exist in the Mediterranean, 600 miles further north. There are no olive trees at all in the Arab Peninsula. So, all of these geographical references make no sense for Mecca. Now, according to Islam, Mecca is probably the oldest city in the world, because according to Surah 7, Ayah 24, when Adam and Eve, when they were up in the Garden of Eden, which is up in space, when they were thrown out of that garden, they were thrown down to earth. According to the traditions, it was Mecca that they were thrown down to. So it would be the earliest sanctuary for all of mankind. We also know in Surah 21 that Abraham is in Mecca. He is there and he goes into the Kaaba and he destroys the idols. That's in Surah 21. So in 1900 BC, Mecca should have existed if Abraham's there, right? We also know from all the traditions that Mecca was the center of trade, north, south, east, and west. That's why it became rich. That's why Muhammad was there. He was a trader. So, it's the mother of all settlements, according to Surah 692, Surah 42, Ayah 5. Adam and Eve came from there. Abraham came from there. Muhammad was born there. And it's also where the Qibla, the direction of prayer, every mosque should be facing Mecca. Correct? From 624 on, it should be the case, because we do know, according to Surah 2, Ayah 145 to 149, that Muhammad, when he moved to Medina in 622, he redirected the Qibla back up to Jerusalem so that it could accommodate the Jews. After 624, the Jews would not accept him as a prophet, so suddenly he gets a new revelation in Surah 2 to redirect the Qibla back down to Mecca. So from 624 on, every mosque should be facing Mecca, right? Now, take a look at this Byzantine map of the trade route from the 7th century. What's missing? Can you find Mecca? This is a copy of a Byzantine map from the 7th century. Mecca isn't there. This is where Mecca should be, right here. It's not on the map. Here's a map of trade routes from the 7th century. These are Arab trade routes. These are not Byzantine trade routes. These are Arab trade routes. Where's Mecca? It's right where that question mark should be. When we look at the earliest maps, we can't find Mecca on any of the maps. This is the map that Patricia Corona looked at, and this is the one that got her curious. She was shown this map. This is a map that's not from the 7th century. It's a map that was made today in the 20th century, redacted back to the 7th century to show you what the place looked like. And when she looked at this map, she noticed that all the trade would have come from here in India and China further away. They couldn't go that way because of the Hindu Kush and the Himalayas. So all the trade used to come across the Arabian Sea over here into the Persian Gulf and used to go that direction up to the Mediterranean world. Are you following me there? The problem is that the Sassanids who were here were warring against the Byzantines who were there. So they were warring back and forth for 200 years from the 5th, 6th, and 7th century. So that shut down the trade from going up the Persian Gulf. They had to redirect the trade from India across the Arabian Sea down to here in Aden. And that's where they took off all the trade. They took it off the boat there, and they went 1,250 miles following that green line all the way up to Gaza in the north. That's a pretty good theory. That's called the trade route theory. Montgomery Watt was the one that came up with that theory. The Muslims love it, and they grabbed onto it, and they're still using it today. Dr. Patricia Crone looked at this map. She says, hold on a minute, you've got a problem there. Let's see if any of you can find that problem. My 10-year-old son found it within 2 minutes. I'm not going to give you 2 minutes. Can any of you see a problem with that theory right there by looking at that map? No? No one's going to try? Should I give you a hint? Water. That's a pretty big hint. Go ahead, sir. Give him a hand. He's got it. That's true. If you're on boat here and you're coming across the Arabian Sea, why would you take off all the goods here? Dr. Patricia Crone found that if you go only 50 miles by land, it would cost the same amount if you went 1,250 miles by sea. You've got a sea right up here. Why didn't they continue on sea? That didn't make any sense. So she decided to go back and check this out. Now remember, she reads and writes 15 languages. So she went back to the original sources of all the trade documents. She went to the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th. She went to all the centuries leading up until the 7th century, read their trading documents, looked at them in the original language, and she noticed that all the trade coming from India and China, all of it came right across the sea and went right up the Red Sea. And the Arabs had nothing to do with the trade because they did not like boats. They were camel herders. They liked the desert. That's why you don't have any ports along here. There was only one port that she could find. All the ports were on this side in Africa, and the people that controlled the trade were from this area, from Eritrea. The documents, the trading documents that she found over here had Eritrean names or Ethiopian names, African names. They were the traders, which makes a lot of sense once you look at the map. Then she noticed something else. Take a look at there. Here's the trade route, the line, the green line. It comes up to Taif. This is the Western Plateau, all the way up. And then from here in Taif, it goes off the plateau down to Mecca. There's Mecca. It's not on the plateau. It's about 1,000 meters off the plateau. They would have to go down to Mecca to go to a place that had no water, then come back up 1,000 meters to get up to Yathrib up here. Why had no one noticed that before? This is nothing new. It's been around for hundreds of years. Why did no one notice that Mecca's not on the trade route? It would have made no sense to be on the trade route. Why? Because it's too far down. It had no water. So she decided to look and see what was it that made Mecca, if it had anything that made it rich. She was told, according to the trade route theory, that it had 15 spices. And that's why it became rich. So she wrote her book, and she decided to do research on all 15 spices. And she found that none of the spices, except for 2, even came from Arabia. They either came from India and China, or they came from Africa. The only 2 spices that came from Arabia were frankincense and myrrh. And they came from the southern part, the Hadramat, this part here, which is Yemen and Oman today. Nothing about any spice from this part of the world. The only trade she could find that were going up the Western Plateau was milk and leather. You cannot create an entire empire made out of milk and leather. Now, when she came out with this book, it blew open everything we knew about Mecca. She decided, well, let's find out what people knew about Mecca. So she went to every document she could find. She found documents written here in Ctesiphon, which is way up here. That is Baghdad, right up there. It's called Ctesiphon. That's the old name. They had come down here to Yathrib and they came across silver. They had silver mines all over Yathrib. That's not too far from Mecca. Yathrib is what is Medina today. She looked at their documents. No reference to any place called Mecca. She couldn't find any reference from the 1st century, from the 2nd century, from the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th century, from the 7th century, no reference to Mecca. So when did she find Mecca? Not till 741. 741. Muhammad died in 632. She couldn't find any reference to Mecca earlier than 741. That's a whole over 100 years later. So what is this city? Where is this place that Adam and Eve were sent down to? Where is this Kaaba that supposedly Abraham rebuilt with Ishmael? In fact, she found out, not just she, Hitti found this out, in almost every one of those oases, in Najran, in Sana, in Taif, in Yathrib, in Tabuk, in Khaybar, all of these oases had Kaabas. It was quite normal to have a Kaaba. You have a Kaaba with gods in it, idols in it, then when the merchants would come along, they would go and pray to their idol, and you would get money for it. It was a great way to enrich yourself. There wasn't just one Kaaba. There were many, many Kaabas. Why hadn't anybody noticed this before?
Bahasan tadi menggambarkan dengan jelas bahwa apa yang digambarkan literatur Islam mengenai kota Mekah tidak cocok sama sekali dengan keadaan yang sebenarnya. Dan keberadaan kota Mekah tidak dikenal pada abad ke-7, apalagi sebelumnya. Pertanyaannya, Muhammad lahir di mana? Hal ini sangat krusial bagi dunia Islam, karena sejarah Islam yang ditulis Ibn Ishaq, Ibn Hisham dan At-Tabari tidak mempunyai dasar keilmuan yang memadai. Sejarah Islam yang dipercayai umatnya, ternyata tidak mempunyai dasar yang sesuai.
Well, take a look at modern Mecca today. Maybe you've seen this picture. Look what they're doing to Mecca. Here is Muhammad's house, where he grew up, where he was born. They're now destroying his house. Here is Khadija's house, where his wife grew up. They're now destroying her house. Why are they destroying these houses? And why are they cementing it all up? Any idea? Folks, can you see what's happening as we speak? Muslims all over the world are upset. But the Saudi Arabian government is continuing. They're going to build 62 of these buildings all around the Kaaba, so that all the rich Muslims can have air conditioning when they come to do the Hajj. That's their reasoning for it. You can see why. Mecca did not exist before 741. It's too late.
Pembangunan hotel-hotel dan gefung pencakar langit di sekeliling Masjidil Haram punya dua tujuan, selain agar orang-orang kaya yang berhaji mendapat tempat yang menyenangkan. Dan yang terutama, agar supaya situs-situs yang dikatakan dahulu adalah rumah Muhammad, rumah Siti Khadijah, rumah Abu Bakar dan lain-lain tertutupi, karena faktanya tidak ada peninggalan arkeologis di situ. Bahasan berikut adalah mengenai kiblat masjid-masjid yang dibangun pada awal Islam, sangat menarik apa yang ditemukan para scholar.
So if Mecca didn't exist before 741, what are you going to do with the Qibla? The direction of prayer. Every Muslim must pray towards Mecca, am I correct? And doesn't matter where you are in the world, you always pray towards Mecca, towards that building right there, the Qibla. In Surah 2, ayah 143 and 145, the direction of the Qibla was then redirected down to Mecca. That would be in 624, the date they give. But here's the problem. Archaeologists are having a difficulty. As early as 1905, two archaeologists, one called Dr. Creswell and Dr. Fedavadi, in 1905, were traveling in that part of the world. You can't go there anymore, but back then you could. And they were looking for the earliest mosques, and they wanted to go to find these mosques that were in the 7th century. So they went to mosques, one mosque in Wasit and another mosque in Kufa, which is in what is today Iraq. And they started digging down to the different layers till they got to the original floor plan of these two mosques. And when they found the original floor plan of both Wasit and Kufa, they noticed the Qibla was not facing Mecca. It was facing directly west. When they went to Egypt, outside Egypt is Fustat, the garrison town. When they went to the mosque in Fustat, just outside of Cairo, when they dug down to its original floor plan, they noticed that the Qibla was facing east. It should have been facing south. It should have been facing down here. But Kufa and Wasit were facing that direction. Fustat was facing this direction. If the earliest mosques that we've been able to find are facing west and east and not south, then it looks like we have a different Qibla. Jarkib Odessa in 705 also said that the Qiblas So from all this it is clear that it is not to the south that the Jews in the Maghreb is the name for the Arabs at that time, in the regions of Syria prayed, but towards Jerusalem. He thought it was Jerusalem as well. He was actually wrong. Dr. Dan Gibson decided to pick up this argument. He had read about it. He'd heard about the debate I had had on it. He also knew about that this was a problem. He saw also that there was a problem. So he decided to do something that no one else had done. He decided to look at all the earliest mosques, but you can't go to the earliest mosques today and see where the Qibla is because they are all facing Mecca. Every mosque is facing Mecca, anywhere in the world. So he decided to use satellite technology to look down from space, to look and see where the original floor plans for all these mosques were. And guess what he found? When he looked at the great mosque in Guangzhou in China in 630, it's facing Petra, not Mecca. When he looked at the great Humayma Mosque, southwestern Jordan, the Qibla is facing Petra. It should be facing Mecca. The great mosque at Baalbek in Lebanon, it's facing Petra. It should be facing Mecca. When he went to the great mosque of Sana'a in Yemen, the capital city of Yemen, right at the very bottom of the peninsula, built in 705. Now look at the date. All the Qiblas were supposed to be canonized in 624. So every mosque after 624 should be facing Mecca. But here's one built in 705, and it's facing Petra, not Mecca. This is an interesting one. This is in Jerusalem. Now you have the Dome of the Rock right here. That's the beautiful Dome of the Rock. Here you have the Al-Aqsa Mosque here. The Dome of the Rock is built in 691. The Al-Aqsa Mosque is built in 709. Look at the entire citadel, including both the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa, are all facing Petra. 691, 709. The entire citadel is facing Petra, the third most holy shrine in Islam. The Damascus Mosque, built in 709, it's facing Petra. It should be facing Mecca. The Anjar Mosque in Lebanon, look at the date, 714. It's facing Petra. It should be facing Mecca. The Mosque of Umar in Basra, now we're in Syria, 720. We're almost 100 years later. If the Qibla had its canonization in 624. This is 720. Almost 100 years later, it's still facing Petra, not Mecca. It's not till 727 that they finally found a mosque in Pakistan, Banbor in Pakistan, facing Mecca instead of Petra. This is over 100 years later. But then in 728, here you find a Qibla in the Qasr al-Khayr al-Sharqi in Syria. It's not facing Petra or Mecca. Looks like they're a little confused on this one. Now here's what's interesting. Take a look at this mosque from Amman in Jordan. This is the older mosque, built in 700. It's facing Petra. They then rebuilt another mosque behind it and above it in 740. It now is facing Mecca the right way. So what happened between 700 and 740? That's the question we need to ask. The Mushata Mosque in Amman, now we're in 743. It's back to Petra again. This is 120 years later. The Rabat, now when we get to North Africa, they don't seem to know where to face. Because in Tunisia, here's a fortress in Susa, Tunisia, in 770, it's not facing Petra or Mecca, it's facing directly south. They're a little confused in North Africa. The same way in Spain. Take a look at Spain. There's Petra, there's Mecca, it's facing quickly south. Obviously, there's something that we need to find out about North Africa and Spain as to why they're completely miscued. The great mosque in Karaoun in Tunisia in 870. Now we're into the 9th century. See, these are much later mosques. In the 9th century, there seems to be some type of confusion here because they're not facing Petra or Mecca. It's facing straight south again, much like you found in other North Africa. But take a look at these were up until 725, excuse me. Up until 725, every Qibla was facing Petra. And what's interesting is they were all uniformly facing Petra. I've heard Muslims try to say, well, they didn't know their direction at that time. Listen, these were camel herders. They went through the deserts. There were no roads in the deserts. And even the paths they used to take would be covered over by a sandstorm. So how did they know where to go? They used the stars. They were brilliant at knowing direction. Otherwise, they would have died. You can't tell me they did not know where Petra was or where Mecca was. The fact that they're all facing Petra until 725 shows me. So from 622 to 725, every mosque he looked at was uniformly 100% facing Petra. Between 725 and 822, there seems to be a confusion. There seems to be something going on. We don't know what it is yet. But there was still backers and forings, especially in North Africa. They didn't know where to go. So 12% of the mosques were facing Petra. 50% started now to face Mecca. 38 were parallel or in other directions. And it isn't till 822 that every mosque begins to face Mecca. That's 200 years later. It takes them 200 years to get every mosque facing Mecca. Now we should ask, why is it that no one's known that before? That to me is hugely troubling.
Fakta yang terungkap dari penelitian arah kiblat dari masjid-masjid pada awal Islam. Sampai 100 tahun awal Islam, masjid-masjid tidak mengarahkan kiblatnya ke kota Mekah, tapi ke Petra. Petra adalah kota kuno di Yordania Selatan yang saat ini menjadi situs sejarah dan objek turisme. Mungkinkah Islam berawal dari sini, Petra, dan bukan dari Mekah? Sangat mungkin, selain daripada menjadi arah kiblat masjid-masjid yang dibangun pada awal Islam. Gambaran kota suci Islam yang ditulis literatur-literatur Islam sangat cocok dengan Petra.
So why Petra? Well, take a look where Petra is. Remember that Arab trade route? I showed you where Petra, it's in the center of all the trade. See, Mecca's not even on the trade route map for one very good reason. There was no trade that went through Mecca. But Petra is on the center of every route. What is Petra known for? How many people have been to Petra? Has anybody been there? Okay, one man, two. What do you notice about Petra? It has tombs and temples. It was a center of the Nabatean kingdom. The Nabateans, we know about the Nabateans. They existed from the 2nd century BC. They existed, in fact, it's the Nabatean kingdom that we get the name Allah. Allah is a Nabatean god. The black stone that's in the Kaaba comes from Petra. What's more, Arabic, the language Arabic comes from Nabatean script. They are the precursors to the Arabs. And yet all of their mosques and all of their temples all around the world were facing Petra up until 725. Let's take a look at Petra even closer. Look at Petra. It's in a valley. It has a parallel valley. It has a stream going right through it. It has fields, trees, grass, clay, loam. It has olive trees. It's near this. If there was ever a pillar of salt that Lot's wife would have been, it would have been close to Petra, because that's exactly where that event took place. Petra has all the items listed above from the Quran and the Islamic traditions. Everything that we see in the Quran and the Islamic traditions fit Petra. None of them fit Mecca. Thus, could it be Petra that all these places were referring to? What's more, take a look at Ad, Thamud, Midian. Remember the people that are referred to in the Quran over and over again? 23 times these people from Ad, 24 times the people from Thamud, 7 times from people from Midian. Take a look and see where they are. They're all around Petra. They lived right around Petra. No wonder whoever was writing or whoever was coming in contact with these people, they were living, whoever that person was, that messenger, that prophet, was living 600 miles further north, not in Mecca. Mecca's way down here. 600 miles between the two. So what's the significance? And this is what we need to unpack today. We don't know anything about Muhammad at all in the 7th century.
Yang perlu kita ketahui, hari ini kita tidak tahu apapun tentang Muhammad pada abad ke-7. Sudah jelas kita simak bahwa sosok Muhammad tidak nyata di sini. Dan ini adalah hasil penelitian para scholar yang tergabung dalam Revisionist School of Islamic Studies. Oleh karena itu Alkitab sebagai kebenaran sudah pasti.
tidak akan menubuatkan entitas yang tidak nyata, seperti Muhammad dan Islam.